Why don't we talk about Brandon's $15 Noble hoodie?
Yes, exactly. $15 right here on Noble.
What a good deal.
So it's the size too small. It's like coming up my arms. But you know what? It looks good, right?
You know how fast
We'll shrink into it.
Yeah, thanks. Keep losing weight.
you're going to keep doing back
I'm fasting and doing CrossFit.
row burpee workouts. Brandon has done that workout 17 times.
Man, I will not do that again.
Have we posted
What
any of
workout?
those?
He hasn't posted any.
From the strategy thing.
Oh, no.
The 10 round.
Teaser.
Man, the handstand push-up, I was sick for both of those, but I felt fine in the handstand push-up one. I got like 5 rounds into the burpee one, and I'm like, this sucks.
What a
Chris
mistake.
So before we started, y'all were talking about watching that Boz podcast.
Yeah.
What were we just talking about?
Yeah, so we Adrian Bosman went on the CrossFit Games podcast with Chase Ingram and basically was talking about what the season in the Open and quarterfinals was going to look like. There weren't like major revelations, but I thought it's probably an interesting podcast that I should listen to if we're going to do a podcast and talk about the season. So it's interesting to hear some of the changes, which I think will inform content we make in the Open, and I think inform how people at different levels are going to attack just the season.
Yeah, I actually really liked the changes that they talked about. Now, there are some things in there that maybe we can dive into as far as programming goes, but the simple stuff of like no floor plans, I know some people will complain.
Yeah, that's always the case.
Yeah, real quick, tell me the big changes that you liked.
Well,
And then dive
I mean,
into it.
first one,
I think
let's start with that one.
Yeah, no floor plans. I just think for affiliates, like
In the
watch
Open.
in the Open, we watched Travis have to navigate that on a Friday Night Lights where they had 8 feet from a barbell, and then there's this lane. It just makes it easier when there are 30 or 40 people going at a time. So I appreciate CrossFit listening to that feedback and changing it. And then the scorecards being easier to read. Who knows what that actually will look like? But it is nice that if they could have all the standards kind of up front so people don't get confused on that.
Yeah, he didn't really elaborate on what that meant. He just said, if you're one of those people that likes to, they use the term overthink all the time, which I'm like, well, it's kind of like if you give a rule book, people should read it. But he's saying that he's going to make it more at a glance. So you could look at it, know the standards immediately, and be able to just have a general class person pick it up and know, okay, this is the workout. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do, which I really like, because I think the big issue in the Open, especially when there was that 10% cut line, I think it removes a little pressure now that it's 25%, but you're getting a lot of people that are just at the affiliate level that could potentially do the workout not really according to standards or not accurately, that impact the leaderboard.
Sure.
So I think trying to limit the likelihood of somebody just like not reading the rule book or just doing a first glance and totally messing it up, but still getting their score to count on the Open is probably a good move.
Hold on, did he really say overthink? I think I just got triggered. Like right now, I want to like.
It was
Did he
used
really
at
say
least
that?
12 times in the podcast.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding? They've never been on the other side of having to deal with their bullshit. Why am I the one getting triggered right now? I'm not even involved in this. Jesus Christ.
Chase Ingram said he was guilty of overthinking, but Chase has also been an athlete multiple times. So I think it's very easy to look at like, okay, you go through something, you're like, oh, well, what if this? What if this? You can look at that as overthinking, but it's also like practically, like we've ran 30 people through these
Chase
workouts.
said he was guilty of overthinking, or Boz said y'all were overthinking it?
Boz said
Both.
Everybody was overthinking
Okay, that's
it.
the part that gets me angry.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to like a semifinal briefing? No? I mean, there are like 30 hands
have
up
to
for
just
every
go
single
home
one
right now.
It is
My blood.
insane.
Should we
Listen,
stop the podcast?
Yes, that is so stupid.
Day one of semifinals last year, North America East, they went over the first workout, which it was the run, sled pull, or whatever. And we sat there for how long, Max? 30 minutes just for the first workout of answering questions from athletes. So people do overthink. Like it's a fair assessment.
But hold on, those things, those little details are important.
They do matter.
It was like,
Yes.
okay, in that example, they said your feet can't move when you're pulling the sled.
That is true.
And somebody was like, well, hold on, wait. So if I go and I pull on the sled.
No, Max, you're overthinking it. You're stupid.
Yeah. Chris's rant is over. But it's like, okay, you pull it and you fall back and your feet move. Your sled has moved 5 feet and you just violated the rules. So do you have to run back and go and move the sled back to where it was because your foot moved? That's a pretty valid question because it would make a huge difference in how tightly people's feet were down. If you're like, oh, I fell, but you're still allowed to have the sled move 5 feet.
You're definitely right. I think that the bigger issue is just making the standards clear from the beginning where those questions don't have to be asked.
Yeah. But regardless, I was a little triggered when he was talking about the overthinking. And another overthinking thing was the removal of the floor plans as a need to be released, because he was like, okay, well, if people get the floor plans, they're overthinking what it could be or this or that. And I was like, well, is it overthinking to know, like, okay, there's rings in this workout. Yeah, there's rings in this workout, and I know there's rings in this workout, and I'm going to have to do it at max effort on Friday. So I probably shouldn't do 10,000 muscle ups, but maybe I should do some muscle up skill work because it's coming out on Friday. I didn't really appreciate that being called overthinking, but whatever, it is what it is.
I think this isn't necessarily a huge change. We kind of assumed this, but he mentioned in programming that there would be a lower barrier to entry with open workouts, but that didn't mean that they're going to be easy. And that's always the case with CrossFit workouts. Like the most simple, it's just rowing and burpees. They usually hurt the worst. But I think that that's something to expect. Maybe the loads will be not as heavy to start workouts. Maybe they'll progressively get heavier as you go. Maybe the complexity of the gymnastics movements will be very simple in the open, but that doesn't, again, mean that you shouldn't be prepared for it. So that's just something to kind of think about.
Yeah, I really appreciate listening to it. I definitely appreciate now that there is a clear indication that some of the frustrations that are happening at the affiliate level or gym level or having to navigate sport versus community interaction is definitely getting into the structure of how they're putting on the comp. So I was like, all right, this is a good step in the right direction. It sounded like, I mean, Chase even called it in that podcast. He compared it to a fun run, which I'm like, oh man, that's kind of weird. Like it's the first step of the professional sport, but we're calling it a fun run. I don't know if I really care because the best people that are actually professionals are going to finish in the top 25% no matter what. But with that context and that skew, I think it means tests are going to be more simple. And yes, simple does not mean easy. I mean, a light dumbbell snatch row burpee workout is going to be horrible. But I think that there is going to be a much more concerted effort at the open level to make sure that they're very simple and that probably people that are not just at the affiliates can see the workout and be like, oh, that's interesting, I'll do it. So I think probably assuming that the open workouts are a step back in regression of skill from even where it was last year. Because I mean, are we going to talk about quarterfinals in this podcast?
We'll just briefly mention it at the end because we're going to do another podcast on how to prep for quarterfinals. This is really, we didn't even introduce the podcast, which is cool. But the whole concept.
It'll be in the title.
It'll be in the title.
They'll be patiently waiting.
We're at minute 8. This is minute 8 of our intro.
We are about to start talking about navigating the open. The last thing that I wanted to mention is when he was talking about the programming, he also, because they're not having an equipment list, they mentioned that the equipment that will come out will be something that everyone has.
Yeah. He used the term very vanilla.
Okay, sure.
So probably no GHDs.
Right. So I think that just means maybe it is just a barbell and a pull-up rig and maybe a little bit of space. That may mean that there aren't handstand walks or shuttle runs. We're still preparing for those things because I think it's worth practicing. And for those that know they're going to make quarterfinals, they will definitely be there. But you may see something very simple, kind of like the original opens. Did you say
there might not be handstand walks or shuttle runs?
Well, they just mentioned
it being the easiest thing to have.
I would think so, but he talked about a smaller space, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I opened this up because my notes were scorecards change, floor plans are gone, and simple equipment. That's basically the only major changes that he talked about at the open level. I think if I were a betting man, that we should assume that it's dumbbell, barbell, rope, box, bar to do gymnastics on, and floor splays.
What was the unsimple equipment from years prior?
Well, like workout 1 last year had muscle ups in it, and it also had 6 different. It had the row, what's the order?
It was
of that
row,
workout?
toe to bar, wall ball, power clean, muscle up.
Yeah, so that's from an affiliate level perspective.
The volume of stuff
year,
you have to have at once.
Exactly. And it was a specific floor plan, and also a lot of gyms don't have rings or these things in high volume. So I think I'm not going to put all of our money on it or like all of our programming on it, but we'll say like 80% of the training volume for athletes getting ready from now until the open it's more simple things and probably also more engine based. Like 2 years ago, there was nothing really heavy in the open. Last year, there was muscle ups, there's 185 pound snatches. My guess right now, based on listening to that podcast, is any of that stuff that's kind of more complex or bigger floor plan layouts or higher level skills is now getting moved to quarterfinals. And our open is going to be more just like classic CrossFit stuff with minimal equipment. I'd say like couplets, triplets, maybe, but if there's a triplet, it's probably 1 or 2 body weight movements. So that way it's condensed floor plans. There's going to be a lot more gaming of floor plan setups, I think, like knowing that there's not a fixed layout. You know, like in the past, people would put like the wall ball underneath the bar and the rower. I think we should expect that that's going to happen and that the people in that 75th percentile cut line are going to have to play the game. Like we'll probably in the open, we'll do our first attempt to just show like, all right, this is what we think the floor plan is. But by Saturday, we'll probably have figured out the game and be able to tell people like, hey, if you're trying to cut 2 seconds per transition for this 20-minute workout, here's what we found is the best strategy to do it.
Yeah, I think that leads us well into how to navigate the open and kind of thinking about it with 2 different styles of athletes. For those athletes that know I'm definitely top 25% and my entire focus is on quarterfinals, we'll touch on that last today so you can kind of skip ahead if that is you. And then we'll also do a separate podcast because we know that's a pretty large group now that's following either our individual program or our compete program online, just because most people that are competitive in the sport are already in that top 25%. But there also are a ton of people that are on the bubble. Maybe you're like 35th to 25th percentile, and your entire goal this year is to qualify for quarterfinals. So you have to make sure that you're optimizing every single week of the open to your best of your ability, stay healthy, hit each workout with full intensity. And for those athletes, we need to put a little bit more focus into actually how we're setting up our open week. So that's kind of where we wanted to start today.
If you had to guess, where would Chris finish?
I was actually going to say, I'm wondering, because I haven't done, yesterday I did my first, what I would count as CrossFit cardio breathing stuff, and I got my shit kicked in. It was nothing. If you read it on paper, you'd be like, that's nothing.
It's actually, that's a good question because I think it changes based on tests for a lot of people that are on the bubble. Yeah. You know, maybe you're a really strong athlete that is hoping for heavy thrusters or heavy snatches like you talked about. And if that is programmed, you make it in. But if it is all very simple and it's just true row, burpee, dumbbell snatch, then the athlete that's maybe a little bit more enduring but maybe weaker, they're going to crush those styles of workouts and they can easily get in.
Yeah, I did the open 2 years ago and not last year because I got injured, but the last year's programming suited me way better. Right. It was heavier, there was more skills in it, the breathy workouts had muscle ups. That's all beneficial to somebody like me who's a little bit less of an engine and more strong / skill
and you have all the skills. Yeah,
I can do all of the skills, I just get tired fast. But if they go more simple, that would push me down the leaderboard. If it's just burpee double under in week 1, and then it's light thruster and chest to bar in week 2, and they make week 3 shuttle run box jump or shuttle run something high body weight, I'll probably get crushed relative to the field. So it is really going to depend, and I think that's going to put I think most people that are super competitive, like intermediate and above, are probably not worried about that 75% cut line anymore. But I think there's a lot of people that are just getting into the sport, that are just learning the skills, that are just starting to develop their strength, that now have the opportunity to do everything right in the open to try to get an opportunity to compete in quarterfinals where that skill threshold goes up. So I think just changes the guaranteed feel. There's a lot of people that are I know I'm going to be 90th percentile. It might be 85th or 95th, but 75 doesn't really worry them anymore.
Right.
Here's a question before you dive in. We're maybe jaded's the word. We're around so many high level people that we're conditioned to seeing them go, and the top 25% feels like easy peasy lemon squeezy. But is this something to be proud of for people who coming in?
I actually have a very guilty moment story. We did a podcast before, and one of our fans that listens to the podcast, I said in the podcast, I'm really bummed about the move from 90 to 75th percentile because I feel like there's a lot of people that took a lot of pride and trained for a really long time to feel like they were in that top 10 percentile, and moving it down to 75th wasn't like, it was taking away the challenge of the thing. And somebody posted a comment on YouTube that made me feel really guilty, basically saying like they've been training for many years and getting to 75th percentile is a big achievement for them. So I have to say, I think anything can be an achievement for you. Even like just doing the open and finishing all the workouts and finishing in the 40th percentile could be an achievement if you are not as genetically gifted as an athlete and you've trained for a really long time, you overcame those things. I think the people we've worked with before that are serious competitors, that drop from 90 to 75th definitely makes it less pressure for it to feel like a real competition. But I think that in context, there's going to be a huge portion of people now between 70th and 80th percentile where this is going to be like a fun challenge that now gives meaning to the open. Yeah. Whereas before it's like, you're never finishing in the 90th percentile. Like you're 50 pounds off on all your lifts and, you know, you maybe not training as seriously, but now some of the recreational people that compete in classes and stuff like that are now going to have the opportunity to get an achievement unlocked in the open, which could be cool.
Right. And for someone who might be on the fence of trying to achieve that, say their bubble to get in the top 75.
Yeah.
What kind of inspiration or advice do you have to like go for it?
I mean, I think the first thing to answer your first question, I do think it gives greater meaning to more people, which is cool. And so, yes, the top 10% makes it seem more exclusive, but now we're just giving an opportunity for more people to give themselves a challenge one time a year with these 3 weeks. And I think that's a cool thing. That's why we all love the sport in the first place, is because we all want to do hard things and we want to do them well. Now this gives more opportunity to those people to do them well. So that's kind of what I would say to them is like, this is your opportunity. You go into the gym. If you're an affiliate, you have a bunch of athletes, encourage them to do this because it's something that they're doing every single day already. And now it's an opportunity to just have another checklist where you're checking that off the box and saying, okay, I did that thing.
Yeah. I think inspirationally, I listened to something, it was maybe like a short clip of a podcast or something where somebody was talking about overcoming hard things and doing well in a hard thing is not necessarily just about that hard thing and overcoming it in the moment. It's more so about the character you develop for when life gives you hard things that are not part of your plan. Like in the open, you choose to sign up. You pay your money and you're like, oh, I'm doing this hard thing. If you have an animal die or you get into a breakup or you get something hard happen in your life or you get stuck in a snowstorm and have to do something, those are hard things that life imposes on you. And some of the gift of doing hard things in your controlled setting, like training and sport, set your character and human capabilities up to better tolerate the adversity that happens just by the nature of how life works. So I think that if somebody is on that bubble and they're that 75th percentile in the open last year, you can have almost a little bit more of incentive to be like lazy and not think about the attention to detail. You get up to your moment of like, oh my God, like I did a running workout last week where I really thought, I was like, man, I'm working so hard, I think I'm going to poop my pants. Like I was like so uncomfortable in that process. And you know, I've trained for 20 years. So now I'm like, okay, you're not going to poop your pants. You're probably okay. Even if you do, the bathroom's 20 feet away. You can run over there and you learn how to
stains on the floor.
Yeah. And you push yourself through those moments. And
wrong word.
Yeah. Sorry. But I think there will be people in that 75th percentile that will have that chance to be like, oh, I'm really uncomfortable. Can I go farther? Can I go deeper into this? Can I overcome that? And it'll give you that incentive. And it's not just for crossing over the 75th percentile. That's just like a marker of accountability for you to try to dig a little bit deeper or care a little bit more or push yourself a little bit harder. And in doing that, that's where I think the achievement of sport happens. So it's like you need to learn how to frame this opportunity in the open in a way for wherever your skill level is. So that way you can push yourself and actually get out of it what it was supposed to be as a community challenge.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the common mistakes we see with those athletes that are trying to make the top 25%.
The bubbles.
The bubble level athlete. I think the first one, we see this every single year, and it's going to be the same this year. Those, especially the new person that's just in love with CrossFit, they do too much in the week of the open. And in particular, on the Wednesdays and then the Saturdays after the Open. So they're still like, I'm not fit enough. I need to do a really hard Metcon on a Wednesday or even on a Thursday before the Open workout comes out.
So they're still coming out on Thursdays at noon?
They're going to come out on Thursdays. It's noon West Coast time, so 3 p.m. here. Yeah, on the East Coast.
Did they say that? I think
that's how it's always been. Yeah. So the idea there, though, is the athletes goes hard on a Monday, goes hard on a Tuesday, goes hard on a Wednesday. Maybe they go and do an easy, everyone says their zone 2 run, but really they're way harder than that.
Running a 5K for time.
Yeah, exactly. And then you come in on Friday and you're a little bit sore, you're a little bit beat up. And maybe that's okay for an athlete that doesn't care. But if you really are trying to make the bubble, then you need to optimize your attempt on Friday, do your best, make sure you feel good, you're recovered, and you're peaked for that.
Hold up. You just said you said you come in a little sore, a little beat up. I think it's almost, and you'd probably agree, that some people come in not feeling sore, not feeling beat up, but the fatigue is there, right? You get what I'm saying? The things that they did fatigued them.
Yeah.
They might
even if they're not sore and beat
even
up.
if they're not sore or beat up, it's like you drained yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I think with that example person, people need to, if you're on the bubble, you need to think about it as a 3-week long competition. It's very easy to get wrapped up in the excitement of a start. And in CrossFit, I've been doing this since 2009, and I'll still come out in workouts too hot. Like there's just an excitement in people that are striving to learn how to go faster and push hard that you can oftentimes get overexcited. That same thing happens over the course of a 3-week competition where they're like so excited. Oh, the Open's coming. The Open workout's coming out on Friday. I want to hit, I want to do a Metcon on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And they don't think about the aggregate management of their energy over 3 weeks where you have to do each workout 2, sometimes 3 times, depending on if there was an error in how you executed it. So I think learning how to pace yourself for 3 weeks and not think unrealistic things like you can build your fitness in the course of 2 weeks leading into the
it's like going to the buffet. You can't do all the bread first. Like you have to make sure you get to the steak later on.
I bet you I can.
I'll do both.
So Max, give us an example of maybe what a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday looks like. Let's say even week 1. You don't know what the workout's going to be, but we have ideas, right? We've seen over the last couple of years what they've programmed. So how would a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday look like, assuming that they're actually taking a true rest day on Thursday?
Yeah. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of week 1 might be a little bit different than weeks 2 and week 3. Generally speaking, if you started with us, the training cycle to get ready for the Open started in the beginning of January. This year, was it Jan 1 or 4?
January 1st.
January 1st. Yep. So you had a 6-week long period or 7-week long period.
Yeah, it's 8 full weeks before the first week of the Open.
So you had 8 weeks to prepare. We're doing the throwdowns now. People are getting used to that. So generally speaking, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday will be a little bit more of a taper week in week 1.
What is a taper?
A taper is just a reduction in volume. So let's say in week 8, you were doing whatever, like 10 squats over 80% of your 1 rep max, and you were doing a Metcon, and you were doing some extra conditioning and accessory work. The week of Open week number 1, there's going to be a reduction in that volume and intensity. So you're not going to do your strength work as heavy. You're not going to push your energy systems where you feel like you're going to poop your pants in the middle of a workout. Things maybe that were for time are going to now look like EMOMs. Your goal there, and kind of the theory of peaking that we've been using for years with CrossFit athletes and also athletes in other sports, is you build up this fitness. And as you're building up this fitness, fatigue is also building because you're training for 8 straight weeks and you're doing chest to bars and muscle ups and burpees and breathing and all this stuff that's tiring your system out. So what you're trying to do at the start of a competition is maximize the fitness, but lower the fatigue level. So at least you step into workout 1 feeling, okay, I'm fit. I've trained for 8 straight weeks. I've done all my sessions, but my energy is high. My muscles aren't beat up. My joints aren't beat up. You're mentally and emotionally ready to dig in at a higher level. So generally that's what I would think of as the last 3 days before you're about to kick off is like you're doing all the skills. You're trying to make predictions about what could come out in week 1. You'd have a floor plan, but now we won't have that. But it's going to be light barbells and stuff on the bar. So you're going to touch all those skills so they feel sharp, but you're going to lower the overall intensity. Then workout comes out on Thursday, and now you start preparing for doing the workout and then managing the rest of the week so that you could repeat it. Because if this first group of person is trying to make it through the bubble, they're probably going to have to repeat the workouts.
Yeah, let's stop there before we talk about like what you would do on repeats, because that's one of the other common mistakes that we get. I think a good example of this, so like what we'll do in our online program, Max, you already kind of touched on it. We had 8 weeks.
Take my shirt off and listen.
Go ahead, do the whole thing.
Take your hoodie off.
I'm going to do the rest of the podcast.
I didn't want everybody
naked.
from the audio version to switch over to YouTube.
Take my pants off too.
35,000 views on this one.
My OnlyFans is starting.
So we had 8 weeks of hard training. There was a deload week in there on week 4. We'll taper a little bit on week 7. Week 8 is going to be a normal week. You come into the first week of the Open, and this is for the athlete that's thinking about, I need to optimize my Friday sessions, which will be the days that we're doing our open workouts. The volume is reduced, like Max said. Typically what we do in compete is anywhere from 20 to like 50% volume reduction in the CrossFit work. So let's just say, like a simple example, if there were 80 front squats in a Metcon that we did last Monday, you're probably going to see like 30 to 40, like 50-ish% of that the next week. And it's going to be an interval style or really short AMRAPs. Some intensity, but the volume's a little bit lower. By the time we get to Wednesday, we do utilize EMOMs quite a bit. If we know what's going to come out the week of, like let's just assume that maybe we hear something or it's week 2 or 3 of the Open, and now we kind of have that checklist down to, well, there's only 3 or 4 movements left. The EMOMs will have those movements in them because we still want to touch them, but we don't want a ton of volume. We don't want you walking into Friday with sore biceps because we put in 100 chest to bars on a Wednesday. And then the last piece is we do have what we'll call a stinger session every Wednesday during the Open. That's kind of something that we've utilized over the last couple of years. Kyle Ruth turned us on to this, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And the concept here is we want something really fast, high intensity, but overall a lower contraction volume. So we're still getting up, our heart rate's high, our respiration rate's high. It allows us to kind of fine tune our systems and give us some confidence before we go into a Friday session. Maybe that's like a really short 21-15-9 couplet with really light load. So I can turn it over really fast, and then that's it for the day. I'm going into my movement and mobility. And then on Thursdays, we have a full movement mobility day that is focused on what we assume will come out in the open workout. So if we think it's going to be a bunch of squatting, you'll see some hips and knees and ankle work in the movement mobility day to prep for Friday.
Hey, real quick, so I think maybe this is an interesting answer, but for people who are wondering, why not work out on Thursday?
There are some people that do, and then I would recommend.
Why do you suggest Friday, I guess?
You mean do the workout?
Do the workout on
or
Friday.
Workout?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do the workout.
Well, that's actually another. Let's go ahead and just move into that next one. Another common mistake is athletes do the workout too soon. Yep. Now, for a games level athlete, they see the workout. We did these strategy podcasts where it's like they can guesstimate their time and they know what a good time is. For those that are on the bubble, it's much harder to guesstimate what a good time will be, what's going to get you in the top 25%. And it probably takes longer to come up with a pacing plan. So what we suggest is, and I get this, I've done this in the past. You see the workout come out on Thursday and you're like, I want to do this now. And then they go out there and they do it. But
especially if you got homies doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's also hard to sleep if you know, for me, if I know I'm about to do a max effort workout that there's a global leaderboard for, then I'm anxious all night. So I want to get out of the anxiety.
So set the scene. I'm anxious I know I'm going to be anxious. All my homies are doing it. Talk me out of doing it to do Friday.
All right. So if you are, we did that series of those 3 workouts,
right,
and we talked about.
So what Max's references is we have a podcast series. It's the 3-part series about pacing and strategy, game day execution, and
video
then film review.
Okay.
We'll link that in the description.
So workout comes out, and you're going to have an opportunity most likely to do the workout twice to get your best score. If you manage your energy and like you really have to, maybe you could do 3 times, but I generally say that an intermediate athlete that's on the bubble should avoid doing that because you just don't really have the like robustness of your physical system to last for 3 weeks and being able to get the best out of yourself. So that first attempt that you do, if you're planning on repeating, you want to be as good as possible because you want to be able to refine your strategy so that way you can get every single rep out of yourself. If your first strategy is just like, oh, the workout came out, I have no scores other than the freaking elites that just did it. I don't know I don't know if I'm going to fail in round 3 or fail in round 5. I don't know if it's going to be more grip or more breathing that's going to limit me. It's very hard to come up with a good pace quickly. So if you're going to do something on Thursday, I'd actually recommend doing a skill session that's just going in and maybe doing one round and being like, okay, this is how long it takes me, and do your work to refine your strategy so that way your first attempt is actually as good as you can. Not your first attempt is kind of a throwaway where you're just going in and you're like, man, I went out so fast and I blew up and then I barely moved. Now there's so much pressure on your repeat because if you don't do as well, your first score is going to keep you out. So I'd say take your time to get scores. People like us will put content out. Other organizations will put content out. People will put scores out. You'll get ability to navigate the floor plans better. So if you wait a little bit, I think it'll just pay dividends for your score to be better.
Yeah, you get more information in that, let's say, 12 to 16 hours between workout announcement and then when you go do it maybe on a Friday morning. It also gives you time to kind of, I know you're anxious, but really reconfirm that this is the strategy that you want to use. Yep. Sometimes when you watch the elite level athletes go, assuming that you see a demo, it's easy to think, oh, I know I can't go that fast, but maybe I'll just cut down 10 seconds to each round. And even that is going to be unsustainable. So watch them, but then also see some peers go first, get some feedback, like Max said, from Training Think Tank or other outlets that put out good information. And then, again, go back to the drawing board, come up with a pacing plan, and then execute on a Friday.
Yeah, a throwback to a workout. There was a Dan Bailey versus Rich Froning head-to-head workout in 12, I think it was 12.2.
The power snatch one?
Power snatch workout.
Perfect example.
Yeah, it was 30 power snatch, 75, 30 at 135,
65,
then 130 at 165, and AMRAP in the remaining at 210. And they went through and they did like 10 touch and go, rest 3 seconds times 3 in the first bar, changed it out, 5 touch and go times 6 in the next bar. I think Rich did touch and go threes for the 165 and finished, and then got like 9 reps at 205. And I had athletes at the time that were really good, like high level regional athletes that saw that workout and got smashed in the face trying to hold those strategies, and were like halfway into the 165 bar. And they were like, oh my God, I blew up. So it's just a natural thing to watch. You see the best in the world do something, they make it look easy. When you're not really thinking about it or having tested it yourself, it's so easy to get wrapped up into being like, oh, well, they did 10, so I'm going to do touch and go threes or something like that. Just a bad idea.
Yeah. The next one kind of goes into wrapping it around into the next week, which is something that you started to talk about. So we talked about doing it too soon. We think you should wait till Friday. You do it on a Friday, then the tendency is if you do poorly, which look, if you're on the bubble, you probably are going to have a blow up workout.
Or a mistake. Like
totally. And even the best will have mistakes in workouts. They can just get away with it a little bit more.
Or even if it's not a mistake, you're on the bubble. You got to optimize.
Totally. So then you look at your score, you see some of your friends go, they beat you by a couple reps, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to come back Friday night and do the workout again, or I'm going to do it again on Saturday. And while you may have to do that because of travel or whatever, the best, I think, situation for most people is to do a workout Friday, have a rest day on Saturday or Sunday, or a skill day on Saturday and Sunday, and then come back on Monday. So, Max, how would you set up a weekend for an athlete that maybe is on the bubble? They do the workout on Friday, and let's say they bomb it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they don't bomb it. But I'd say Friday, you do the workout. After the workout, process it. Do your video review right away. Take your splits. Get an understanding of where you lost time, how it felt, cool down, and use the opportunity to like, okay, now you've done your first attempt, and now the work is going to be setting up for when you do your next attempt. Generally speaking, for most people, the most rest time you can get in between those 2 attempts, the better. Your body could be a little bit more fresh. If you did 100 chest to bars on Friday, if you're like me, like my biceps might be sore all the way through Monday.
Yeah.
So if I get an extra day of rest, I might be able to perform. You have crazy stories like Travis coming in morning and then coming in and doing it in the evening. But for bubble level athletes or people that are not training full time, that's hard to do. So you basically have Saturday and Sunday, and to use one of those days as a full recovery day and the other as a combination. You're doing a little bit of active recovery to get out the fatigue of whatever you did. So as an example, let's say you did 200 wall balls. Maybe you're going to have 20 minutes of flushing on the bike just to get your legs pumping and try to get some of the soreness out. Then you have, okay, well, there also is 2 more weeks to this competition. So there's going to be a couple things that might be just general skills or something in training that might show up because you don't want to totally decondition and wrap your whole training around week 1 in week 1. You also got to be thinking ahead a little bit.
So let's say it was double unders and wall balls in week 1. we can kind of cross those off the list. But now we still have things like burpees and rowing and dumbbell snatches and all that. You're saying maybe you add some of those other skills.
Yeah, and it's just low volume. It's just so you can do some training and move and keep in context the fact that you're doing 3 weeks of work and competition. And then the other time can be spent actually working on whatever you identified from your video review. So maybe you learned that your transitions were really off, or every time you got into the rower, you were putting both feet in and then grabbing and then going back and pulling and getting up to your working pace in 5 pulls. And you watch our repeat video and we show you how to get in with 1 foot and how to pull back and how to get it up to your working pace in 3 pulls. So maybe there's just some practice of that skill that happens on Friday or happens on Saturday that you identified from your Friday day. So I think that's what your days in between attempts usually look like if you're on the bubble. A little bit of recovery, a little bit of skill work from the actual workout, and then with any remaining time, a little bit of skill work on what you might expect to come out in subsequent weeks.
Yeah. And by the way, like that free practice on transitions, or maybe it's a little technical issue, those are like things that you can get better at right away that don't require you to have any more capacity. Like the rower is a perfect example of this. We've seen this every single year, especially the ones that are like 15 or 20 minute AMRAPs where maybe you have 6 or 8 transitions back in and out of the rower. If you can just practice getting in and start pulling right away, maybe you're saving 2 or 3 seconds per round, but over the course of 8 rounds, that gives you enough to pass a bunch of people on the leaderboard, which gets you into the top 25%.
Yeah. Another example is a dumbbell power snatch. So a lot of people, like at the highest level, you see them, they snatch, put it in the other hand, go back down, and they're going at full speed. At the bubble level, it might be, okay, you do a snatch, you put it back down on the ground, you switch hands to the other side, and you go up. Let's say a workout comes out where it's like 40 of those for 3 rounds, and you're doing that slower transition. You might basically be taking yourself out of the bubble by not doing the transition skill. So you come in the next day, and instead of using a 50 or a 35, you use a 10-pound dumbbell and just work on the sequencing of getting the dumbbell from your hand into the other hand. So there's a lot of things that you can do. If you're really trying to optimize your performance, it becomes, what is your attention to detail? What are you visualizing? How are you doing in the workout? When the workout gets really hard, what's the self-talk you need? Do you need a coach there to hold you accountable? So I think that this is the Corpus Animus podcast. You have like the body side of it that needs to do the workout, but your Saturday day is kind of the mind side that you're using your intellect to try to figure out, how do I get more out of myself on Monday? And that's what Saturday is really all about.
So the last one is poor.
This is last mistake.
The last mistake, I think, is poor planning on your recovery. Most people do the workout, and even if they had a good plan for Saturday, a lot of people are like, I am dead. They're laying on the floor afterward, and they just like get up, grab their stuff, and get out of the gym.
Go get some beers.
Exactly. That too.
Dehydrate
maybe
yourself.
Maybe do Friday Night Lights. So I think that especially if you want to make the top 25%, immediately after the workout, you're already thinking about your video review and how you can do it better, but you also need to get into a recovery mindset right away and take that all the way through until Monday when you retest.
Yeah. I know there's people that'll be in that 75th percentile. They're like, oh, I'm not an athlete. I'm doing this for fun. I get that. But the people I'm speaking to, is like, you're actually trying to take this seriously and optimize for 3 weeks. In that case, try to set your behaviors and your habits up that, hey, for these next 3 weeks, you're going to be a little bit more disciplined than normal. You're going to put a little bit more focus. It's not just exercise now. It's more about trying to find your best self. And in that capacity, I think if you can frame it that way, it makes the recovery easier. Because I think a lot of the recovery stuff is just lifestyle habits. You do Friday Night Lights, go home, cool down, rehydrate, get your nutrition dialed in, then sleep well, and do all of those basic things: mobility, breathing, down regulation breathing. It's very easy to just be like, okay, now I did it. It's over. I can relax mentally, and then not realize that recovery is an active process. Yeah. It's not just not
laying
doing
on the couch.
anything. Yeah, it's not.
Right. Yeah, and I think I said that was the last thing, but another quick thing to think about too is...
This is a bonus thing.
Bonus thing. We haven't done that in a while. we put out a lot of good information, and so do others. So lean on that. Maybe it's a Thursday night. Some people come out with some tips videos, or maybe it's Saturday and people have a retest video. Watch those things if you're really intent on making the top 25%. So you can just kind of glean as much information as you can during the weekend so you can crush your Monday attempt.
Yeah, every open is something comes out that's gameable. Right. And in the beginning, we probably might not find the game immediately, but we'll probably give you a better starting point. Like, we do the workout. I think Mike and Brandy are going to do them. Mia has talked about doing them. Maybe we can convince Brandon to do it while live announcing his workout. Now I'm doing thrusters. They're 2 seconds a rep. But when we send that video out, the starting point for you, especially if you're on the bubble, you'll have a better idea of like, okay, this is how I need to go about it. Brandy and Mike are very fit, and they'll almost guaranteed be in the top 25%. So, but they're also not like elite individual full-time young games athletes. So they'll give you some sort of a barometer for like, okay, this is where I need to go. And utilizing that before your first attempt, like I talked about Thursday night, instead of just getting overexcited and being like, oh my God, I got to do it, and doing it, use that opportunity to watch videos, see what other people are saying about those things, test out a round. Maybe a movement comes out like that cross under singles thing that you haven't done enough of. You can use it as an opportunity to practice skills, to visualize, to set a game plan, sleep on it, and then come in Friday and crush it.
So those are the athletes that are trying to make it. They're on the bubble. What about all of the athletes that know they're going to be in the top 25%, or even like maybe it's a semifinal level athlete where now with the new structure, it's going to be harder than ever to make it to a semifinal.
And make sure you guys tell all your friends who clicked out of this video already what Brandon's about to say.
Well, even for, let's say you're not a semifinal. I'm just saying everyone needs to focus on quarterfinals that's in that top 25%. If that is your focus, then the way that you navigate the open is going to be different than the athlete that's on the bubble, or at least it should be, especially if you want to optimize your scores in quarterfinals. The nice thing about it this year is that we have 8 weeks from week 1 of the open until which will be week 8, the quarterfinals test. So you have your 3 weeks of the open, and then really kind of like 3 to 4 weeks of training, and then you'll have your quarterfinals test on that 8th week of what we're going to call our competitive season cycle. So Max, when you're looking at those 3 weeks of the open for, let's not even say a semifinal athlete, let's just say an athlete that, hey, Max, I'm coming to you and I'm top 10%, but I'm not really that, interested in semifinals.
They're almost positive they're a quarterfinal athlete.
Yeah, I know I'm going to make quarterfinals. I'm not worried about it, but I want to get my best score. Last year I finished, 1800th. My goal is top 1,000 this year in quarterfinals. What do I need to do during the open?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the open things are, for that type of a person, it's really about psychological framing it and using what you can in the open to continue to get better. So the open then becomes week 1, week 2, and week 3 of your quarterfinal training cycle. It's not a competition per se, but you want to use the competitive experience to get the most out of yourself. I think the mistake a lot of people make is that they let their ego, which we all have egos, especially if you're competing and you get on a leaderboard, like you probably want to do well and you don't like seeing your name crushed by thousands of people above you. But that can really deter your training quality in weeks 1, 2, and 3. If, let's say you do the workout on Friday morning, you watch a video and you're like, okay, I think I got this. You go in and maybe you just don't execute right, or you set up the wrong floor plan because now there's not floor plans. Very easy, and very often I've seen athletes, even games athletes, that are going to make it through in the top 10%, that will totally deviate their training for quarterfinals and repeat the workout. Or they'll come back in on Saturday and just repeat it because they don't like where their score is. I think figuring out ahead of time, this is what I want to get out of the open, and sticking to it in the context of your long-term training plan is the key to make sure that you're actually excelling in quarterfinals. If you go into the open and you let the open dictate everything for 3 weeks, then you're probably going to have to recover for a week or 2 after the open, and you're not going to really have that much time to properly prepare for quarterfinals. So I think the mental component is the most important for that athlete. They need to know, okay, I'm going into the open. What can you get out of it? Well, you can really practice your competitions. So take every workout maximally seriously, but then also when it's over, let it be over. You did let's say workout number 1 is a 20-minute AMRAP of double unders and burpees and toes to bar. It's all body weight. Well, then on Friday afternoon, you might need to come in and do your strength work and get your strength progressions in. So you got to be able to like let it go quicker if you're a quarterfinal athlete. And I think managing that mindset is probably the most important thing.
I think that's the most common one that we see is people, and again, everyone does have an
like
ego.
getting sucked in, you mean?
They get sucked into, I need to retest this. And look, some people will do it because they want more practice on maybe a specific style of workout. But in most cases, it's probably best Friday you do the open workout, and then you're sticking to your progressions the rest of the week because as Max pointed out, it's the first 3 weeks of what is your quarterfinal prep. Like if you really want to prep for quarterfinals, you need that time to do all the other, your skill acquisition for maybe movements that you haven't practiced yet for quarterfinal style workouts, maybe ladder style work, and a bunch of strength work, because that's going to be a huge separator in quarterfinals. If you're doing open workout hard on Friday, and then, I need to recover because I want to retest it on a Monday, then Saturday is a missed training opportunity. Monday's another missed training opportunity because now you're retesting the workout. So where are your training days in the week? I think it's better for most people to just stick to it one time and then use the rest of the week to prep for quarterfinals.
Do you have an outline like we gave the other people?
Yeah. Oh,
Go ahead.
No. You had
No, go ahead.
Okay. I think for those quarterfinal athletes, like what we'll do, for example, and compete in our RX or Elite Paths, they'll do the open workout on a Friday. But actually, we tell those athletes, depending on what the workout is, I should preface it with this. We don't write the training until Thursday night. That's something that we do. It's the only time of the year where it's like literally week to week. On a Thursday, the workout comes out. Then all of our coaches sit down and we come up with a game plan based on what the open workout is.
Why?
Because we want to know
why.
Yeah.
But
the big picture is we want to know what those movements are, how demanding the workout is, and then that will dictate what we put into the next week as far as prepping for those open workouts and what we can do on Friday and Saturday based on what quarterfinal movements in our checklist we can use. So for example, let's just say it was a ton of heavy thrusters in the open workout on a Friday. We're not going to put heavy squatting and thrusters again in on Saturday. And if we wrote it ahead of time, maybe we just did that because that was our plan with our progressions. Well, then those things conflict.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that nothing conflicts, and we're still going through our movement checklist to get everything in that we want for quarterfinals. If the workout isn't crazy demanding, we may put it first, but oftentimes we'll actually still stick with our strength work in the mornings, especially on Fridays, because we want our athletes to make sure that they're prioritizing the strength or strength endurance work that we're doing for quarterfinals. Then they would do the open workout, and then Saturday, based on what that open workout looks like, we're going to have a checklist of strength movements we need to touch, CrossFit-based movements for the open that we want to touch, and a lot of skill acquisition work based on quarterfinals. So things that we've seen in the past that have been big separators, rope climbs, GHDs, handstand walking variations. So now we actually have a full checklist of not just regular handstand walking. Like what if it is a handstand hold, a pirouette into a handstand hold. They did a handstand hold last year for age groups, and it really messed a lot of people up. They couldn't hold for more than 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure we practice that not only for our individual athletes, but our age group athletes as well. And then that obviously informs us for the next week. We look at the movement checklist, and let's just say, again, it's heavy thrusters, burpees, and double unders. We're not going to do as many of those variations on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, but we may play off of different iterations of those movements. So if it was double unders, we may just do a bunch of crossover singles the next week because we know those may come out in quarterfinals. So again, it's informing us on how to write the programming, and that's why we wait till Thursdays. But the focus of the week is not just on optimizing the open workout. We want you to crush that, and we want, to Max's point, use that as an opportunity to sharpen the skill of competing. But then we need to think about the other days as quarterfinal prep. What may come out in quarterfinals, and how do we prepare you for that?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is your open score as it stands right now, unless they completely change the rules, doesn't matter by the time you get to quarterfinals. And we also know, based on that podcast and what they're trying to say, that even the skills we see in the open are going to be different than quarterfinals. The testing structure is also different. You're not doing one workout over the course of 4 days. You're doing multiple workouts over the course of 5 days. So the actual thing that you're preparing for at the next level is different than the open. And you just have to have that in mind. Doesn't mean that a quarterfinal guaranteed athlete should never retest a workout. Like you said, there could be an opportunity where you're like, hey, I need to get better at handstand pushups, and handstand pushups came out and I got smashed. I want to do it for myself. And that could be a good reason to do it. But if it's super simple and it's like, hey, the workout was single unders and rowing, or single unders and push-ups was the workout in the open, and you didn't do well because you got exposed and you think you can get 4 more reps, you really got to take a mindful decision to say, do I want to use a whole one of my training sessions on Monday that's not going to be tested again at the next level to do this thing that I've already done where my score is good enough to get me into the thing that's most important. So I think you just have to have some athletic discipline to know why the hell are you doing the open and where is it in the context of your season.
Totally.
And I think that a lot of people that I've seen get sucked into the hype at the detriment of their performance.
So this is a much smaller group of people, but some people just don't take it seriously at all. And that may be the case for you that's listening, where you're like, the open's going to be easy, and they're not using it as an opportunity to actually refine the skill of competing.
You're talking about people who are going to make it into quarterfinals?
This is kind of the other side of the coin. We
Like
don't see this as much.
Like it's a throwaway.
Yeah, I don't really care about the open workout, so I'm just going to kind of go in. I'm not going to warm up. I'm going to do the workout.
Give me a name so I could really put a...
Chris Norman. It's like, this
I'm
is
not
too
making
easy.
it into quarterfinals.
Max, what do you tell those athletes that are just kind of like not taking it seriously and just going through the motions?
I mean, I think if you're trying to be competitive at something, you should never enter into a competitive realm and totally remove the pressure from yourself, because that's what it's really doing.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, this doesn't matter. But in the end of the day, if you're competitive, everything kind of matters in some capacity. If you bomb week 1 and 2 and 3 of the open, your confidence going into quarterfinals is probably not going to be great. So there is still a very important reason to maybe not put all of your eggs in the basket of optimizing the open, because you know that's not realistic, but leaving every workout proud of how you executed, confident that you've gotten better at the skill of competing, that you've gotten better at setting a strategy, you've gotten better at figuring out how to navigate your own game day mindset. Are you somebody that needs to be hyped up? Do you need your coach there? Do you need to run through a couple rounds of a workout before you do it? You can learn in that time how to be a better competitor and get something out of it. And I think that's very important. So it's not just like, the open doesn't matter, because it does matter. It's just you need to keep it in the context of what it's for. So again, I think all of it ties back to approaching the open with the right mindset for where it fits in the context of your grand plan for the season.
Yeah. I already kind of touched on the layout of a week, but Max, I'll ask you. So you have an athlete that maybe is peaking for quarterfinals because they want to make a semifinal, someone that's kind of close to that bubble. What are you doing once the open workout comes out on a Thursday night?
Well, I mean, same type of thing. The open is one great time where I feel like almost all of our individual athletes and our group athletes are following almost the same structure, because we're all doing the exact same workouts for competition. So workout comes out, all the coaches go through and help design the week, say, okay, handstand push-ups came out, so this is going to be pull-ups and muscle-ups and whatever, and this is going to be the recovery session. So that becomes the base framework that I'll use for athletes. And then zooming out, I know, okay, I have about 8 weeks to prepare. The actual preparation time is multiple workouts over the course of multiple days, where some of them might actually have to be repeated. Mm-hmm. So I think about my 8 weeks of training mapping to that. So there's a period of time between the end of the open and quarterfinals where we do a simulation of the actual quarterfinal style workouts and going back to back to back to back to back on subsequent days, and not just doing one workout. I think of the context of all of my training through the open almost preparing me for that simulation, plus the taper and things that will happen after that simulation leading into quarterfinals. So the week is basically just wrapped around preparing for quarterfinals. So you do the workout. Was the question about the week to week or the whole thing?
Yeah, just in the open time.
Oh, just the open.
We'll
Sorry, I
dive
jumped ahead.
Well, I think it's you mentioned something that's really important too. We will do a simulation with all of our athletes that are under the umbrella. But even in the open, it's good practice for quarterfinal athletes to do a couple hard workouts on a weekend. You maybe don't do that every single week of the open, but let's say like week 2, you do a hard open workout, and then we do need to turn around and do another hard workout on a Saturday that simulates what it will be like in quarterfinals, where you're going to have 4 or 5, maybe 6 workouts in a 4-day period.
Yeah, I mean, the level of intensity and muscle contraction is just so different. Even me right now, I'm pretty deconditioned, I got sick and I had a tweak, and let's say I do no training from now until the open. If I jump into the open and it's one workout every week that I need to go max effort, the workout could come out. I could maybe do some skill work of it. Maybe instead of Friday doing an attempt, I just do some skill work of it. And then Monday do the workout one time, and I can probably get away with it. If I don't prepare myself for the volume of quarterfinals, then you get into it and like, okay, well, you're going to go max effort in the morning. And then in the evening, you're going to do another max effort, different type of workout. Then you're going to come in the next day and do a max effort type of workout. That becomes much more important to have some volume of training built up if you actually want to have any sort of output that is high quality. So you got to take that into mind during the open, and you need to be simultaneously not sabotaging your open performance, but writing the training in a way that it's prepping you for that kind of long-term quarterfinal thing that we know is coming.
Yeah. So big picture, if you're an athlete that wants to make quarterfinals, you're on the bubble, you need to really optimize those 3 weeks of the open, and everything is focused on your Friday and your Monday attempts. Yep. And we do suggest that you reattempt or you retest Friday and then again on Monday, unless you just like absolutely crush it and you're like, yes, this is a top 10% score maybe.
Or maybe you work a lot on Monday and you'd rather do it on Friday, Sunday, or something like that.
For those athletes that know they're going to be in the top 25% and your focus is on quarterfinals, make it that. Dedicate your time in those 3 weeks to prepping for quarterfinals. And we're going to do another podcast for those that make quarterfinals on, okay, well, now what do you do after week 3 of the open all the way through quarterfinals, and how do you actually taper and peak for that week?
Are we concluding this open podcast?
Yeah. Do you want something else?
I was just thinking, it's been 55 minutes, and when we first started, we sat down, and I was like, oh, this could be like a short 20-minute or just about to be open.
I said it never is.
Blah, 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 blah.
Bonus round? Bonus
round?
Bonus.
Are you going to play the recorder? Play us Ode to Joy to finish this podcast. Mary had a little lamb.
Very good.
His fleece was white as snow.
Go crush the open, folks.
All right. Good luck, everyone.